All right, in this video we are going to talk about scatter plots. We're going to introduce you guys to scatter plots. Most of you are familiar with them. We're going to look at things for correlation and what kinds of correlations there are. So if you look at the screen here, we've got three pictures, three different kinds of graphs. All right, in the first picture you can see that the points are organized moving up in an upward fashion from left to right. And there's this phrase underneath it that's written that I'm going to highlight that says, as x increases, y increases. Okay, so that is a hallmark of a positive correlation, that as your x goes up, so does your y. And it's just really, if you think about it, if you do something positive for somebody else, it affects them positively. All right? And so if you can think about it that way. Now, for a negative correlation, it's kind of the opposite. So as x increases, y decreases, right? So the more you do something, the less it happens. So it's a negative correlation. It's kind of the opposite of what you think what would happen, and that's sort of how I think of negatives, is sort of as like an opposite. So as x increases, y decreases. Therefore, going from left to right, the points on the graph are organized in a downward fashion. They're still making a line, just like in the first one, but they're moving in a downward fashion. And then you have no correlation, which is this third option that we have, and that is where it just basically looks like, you know, a gunshot blast on a piece of paper, right? It's just everywhere, and there's doesn't appear to be any relationship from one point to the next. It's just points everywhere, all right, and looks like a mess. So that is no correlation. So if you think about that, it just doesn't look organized. All right, so that's the basic premise of how correlation works and how we label it. All right, and before I go on to the next page, I just want to note that on this, where it says investigate relationships using scatter plots, they use a term called bivariate data. The word bivariate, you break it up into bi and then variate. Well, bi means two, right? That's Greek and Latin word root that means two, and variate means it varies, it changes. So you have two variables and they change, right? And so that's all this means, is that you're going to be looking at relationships with things with two variables. All right, so let's just look at this one example, and then I think you guys will be ready to try these on your own. It says, wages. Determine whether the graph shows positive, negative, or no correlation. If there is a positive or negative correlation, describe its meaning in the situation. Well, I know from what we talked about before that if I have a positive correlation, I'm going to have a line that goes up from left to right. Okay? So this would be a positive correlation. Okay? I know that if I have a negative correlation, I'm going to have a line that goes down from left to right. Okay? So positive, as x increases, y increases. Negative correlation, as x increases, y decreases. All right, and then no correlation was just the buckshot one. That's like everything's all over the place. So if I look at what they give me here, you can see it's obviously not no correlation, so it's not going to be that. Right? So it's not going to be no correlation. And if you look the way the lines, the way this kind of makes a line that sort of trends up this way, right? And you would look at the slope of that line, you would say, well, that's a positive slope, because as x goes up, y goes up. And that's kind of the trend of what you see with these wages. So the wages increase as the hours increase. The hours go up, you make more money. All right, and then when it says describe its meaning in the situation, it means that the more you work, the more money you make. And that's really all it means. You know, the more hours you work, the more you earn. And then obviously negative correlation is not one of the ones in here. So it is a positive correlation, and it means the more you work, the more you earn.